Second Finance Minister Chee has reassured Parliament that Singapore remains committed to upholding its status as an open, rules-based and pro-enterprise business hub. This as a new law was passed today to have the Culture, Community and Youth Ministry's view be considered in applications related to insurers that are either a co-op or linked to one. The debate spanned almost 4 hours, drawing participation from over 15 speakers from the ruling and opposition parties, as well as nominated members of Parliament. MPs raised concerns on how the government's intervention to block the proposed deal between Income and German Income-Allianz could affect investor confidence and stability of laws in Singapore.
Will this bill create uncertainty for global insurers looking to enter Singapore? How can we ensure that our regulatory environment remains predictable and welcoming for foreign investments? Singapore has built a strong reputation as a pro-business destination. Could this discretionary power be perceived as a barrier, making global insurers hesitant to invest here?
My other concerns will be whether the rejection of the Allianz transaction on grounds of public interest will have any impact on our reputation as a global centre that welcome international investments.
MES maintains a regulatory approach that is consultative and provides stability and predictability for industry players. As a standard practice, MES consults on major policy and legislative changes. For complex policies, there could be a series of consultation papers to obtain feedback from stakeholders over an extended period. During these consultations, MES would incorporate relevant feedback and address concerns that arise.
Questions were also raised about the social mission of Income and how to ensure this remains, even though the insurer has yet to decide on its next course of action.
How can we ensure that any future financial partner can contribute to the financial strength of Income while still preserving its social mission? How can we ensure that any new financial investor in Income does not make a quick buck by selling out their stake in a very short period of time?
I would reiterate that the government agrees with NE's and Income's intention to find a strategic partner to strengthen its competitiveness and capital base in the long term, so that it can continue to do well, to do good. If the concerns of MCCY can be addressed in a future deal, the government is open to consider such a proposal, whether it is from a foreign or local entity. The most important consideration is the outcome.
One MP also asked if Income and NTUC Enterprise were transparent in making their representations to the labour movement. Deputy Secretary-General Desmond Tan then stood to reply that NTUC's Central Executive Committee was unaware of the $1.85 billion capital reduction plan when briefed on the Income-Allianz deal, and that they were informed about it only during the ministerial statement that was made on Monday.
We note that the government remains open to any arrangement that Income may wish to pursue, whether with Allianz or any other partners, so long as the concerns highlighted are fully addressed. Income has committed to study carefully the implications of the ministerial statement by Minister MCCY and the amendments of the Insurance Act, and will work closely with the relevant stakeholders to decide on the next course of action.
Well, this capital reduction plan was also brought up by non-constituency member and Secretary-General of the Progress Singapore Party, Hazel Hua, citing the central bank's assessment that Income could still meet its capital obligations despite the $1.85 billion extraction. Ms. Hua asked if the public were misled. And that's especially as previous statements made by Income and NTUC Enterprise stated that the sale of Income was believed to help them shore up funds or improve capital resiliency. Culture, Community and Youth Minister Edwin Tong then explained that the transaction between the two insurers could open up other ways of improving capital, and so the information put out was not misleading.
I think members would understand that there is a need to maintain a capital adequacy ratio. The ratio is determined either by reference to the assets you have or the liabilities you carry. Either one of them can affect your capital adequacy ratio, and consequently, either one of them can affect your capital resiliency.
And with the bill tabled for a second reading in less than 3 days from its introduction, Workers' Party MPs questioned the need for the bill to be amended so urgently.
I hope that the government can address legitimate concerns raised about how this bill and its passage may be perceived as harmful retrospective legislation and rushed as legislation with its attendant negative impact on our reputation as a financial and corporate hub with certainty over laws and regulations.
We want to provide greater certainty on the decision and on the changes to the legislation for the different stakeholders, including the shareholders, but also other parties who are involved in this deal. That's the reason why we are doing it with a certificate of urgency.
Mr. Chee also adds that there is currently no formal application yet by Allianz to become a substantial shareholder of Income, and therefore no retrospective application of the law. The bill was eventually passed with all 7 Workers' Party members abstaining from the vote on amendments to the Insurance Act. Well, a lot to unpack on what unfolded in Parliament, and for that, I speak to Dr. Goh Jing Rong, Assistant Professor of Economics at the Singapore Management University. Dr. Goh, welcome. Now, the deal was blocked in Parliament in the name of public interest. Now, what exactly constitutes public interest in this case?
Thank you, Jill. Fundamentally, public interest at the core is really the people, just like Singaporeans like you and I. So when the government really chose to block the deal, it is really to safeguard the interests of Singaporeans, of us. And why that is the case, I think we all know by now. There were plans from Allianz to pursue capital optimization and distribute $1.85 billion to shareholders over 3 years following the deal completion. So this, coupled with the fact that there is a $2 billion surplus on Income's balance sheet that was carried over during the corporatization, which was meant to support Income's business ops and social objectives. So each on its own is not a cause for concern, but when you put them together and you allow surplus to be distributed to shareholders without benefiting the cooperatives, will actually contradict the original intent. So therefore, in the public interest, the government intervened so as to prevent actions that could undermine Income's capacity to serve the target demographic, specifically the lower income Singaporean households, and to really support the broader cooperative movement in Singapore.
Now, had the deal gone through, how would income policyholders have been affected?
Right, that's a great question, Jill. So to really answer that question, let me first provide some context of capital from the insurer's perspective. So whenever an insurer issues insurance policies, it is required to hold sufficient capital to ensure it can meet claims obligations. So more generally speaking, when an insurer has more capital on hand, it implies that they can potentially issue more policies, and vice versa. If they have less capital on hand, it implies that they can potentially issue less policies. So what this means is that if the deal had gone through, the planned capital optimization that would likely have taken place, which means that the capital base at Income would likely have reduced by $1.85 billion. Given that there are plans to actually distribute capital to these shareholders, it suggests that Income has sufficient capital on its balance sheet to support this about 2 million policyholders at Income, and therefore the impact on policyholders will not actually be as significant as suggested by speculators. However, with less capital on its balance sheet, it actually suggests that there's a potential reduction in Income's ability to support new policies. So therefore, this may actually indicate a potential reduction in policyholders in years to come if this capital extraction had actually taken place.
So what kind of provisions and structural protections do you think need to be worked into a deal for it to continue ensuring Income's social mission going forward?
Well, I think it goes back to why the government chose to block this deal in the first place, right? So I think the critical component is if any capital optimization is to be undertaken when the deal does happen, they really need to first prioritize committing this $2 billion to like either CSLA or other relevant authorities to really support Singapore's cooperative movement, as this $2 billion was originally intended to be used for. At the same time, I feel that there needs to also be strong contractual provisions in place that can safeguard Income's commitment to fulfilling its social mission. This can take various forms, from legally enforceable agreements to perhaps setting up an oversight board, a governance board, right? Regardless of the form it takes, these provisions needs to be explicit and enforceable, which can help to further Income's social mission.
And police. Now, I also wanted to ask you, a question that was brought up in Parliament as well. Your thoughts on whether this episode has brought to light or impacted in any way Singapore's reputation as a financial open hub?
Right, I think that's a fair question. Personally, I do not believe that this incident will negatively affect foreign investors' confidence in Singapore companies. First, the situation that involves Income is fairly unique. Right. In most other foreign investments, a context similar to Income's is unlikely to arise. So this incident should not deter investors' confidence in Singaporean companies, nor would it impact Singapore's reputation as a financial hub. Furthermore, I think the way the government handled this situation, I think is very professional and is very transparent. They were very transparent in terms of why they choose to block this deal. Clearly explain their rationales because in light of this capital optimization plans. So in fact, I think that this incident may have even improved investors' confidence and really strengthened Singapore's reputation as a financial hub. Through this incident, the government has clearly demonstrated its ability to really balance openness to being open to foreign investments while being committed to having proper due diligence and being fair. This actually reinforces Singapore's reputation as being reliable and well-regulated business hub, where investors can operate with confidence. So if any, I think this incident actually improves Singapore's reputation as a financial hub because investors, now they know that their interests will actually be well protected by the countries, by Singapore's regulations.
All right, well, appreciate you really weighing in on this very debated topic today. Thank you so much to Dr. Goh Jing Rong, Assistant Professor of Economics at SMU.